An absolute masterclass in leadership from my new friend, Dalmo Cirne. Wow. Just really practical, really good stories. I'm so excited to hear from my friend Dalmo. Welcome to Market Mavericks. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with leaders who are redefining industries in every corner of the market. From startups to established businesses, we'll uncover the strategies, challenges, and insights that drive success. Get ready to be inspired by the Mavericks who are shaping the future of business. Welcome, everybody, to the Pillars of Purpose podcast powered by Lighting Pros. I'm your host, Matthew Eford, and I'm so excited to bring on the show today Dalmo Cirne, a mutual friend of ours, connected us, and I'm so excited to hear about his life's journey, his book, and the resources and the way that he helps coach teams to lead better. So, Dalmo, for those who may not be familiar with you, if you're come on, again, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself just a little bit. Tell us where you are in the world today.
Hey, Matthew. I'm super excited to be here. I was really looking forward to this conversation. Today, I'm calling you from Colorado. It's quite cold over here. I can
Yeah.
see the snowy mountains, but I'm not skiing today.
Well, that's disappointing. I'm thankful for our time, and I appreciate you sharing some time with us. Hopefully, you'll be able to get some time on the slopes here soon. So, Demo, what do you do? What does your profession life look like?
My professional life recently has been dedicated on the message around my book.
Okay.
Um, And before I tell you the name of the book, I wanted to tell you a story that shows the title could only be called what it is called. There is no other way.
I love it. Let's hear it.
So, in leadership or management, we always have a constant flow of activities coming to you, coming from you. There is this uninterrupted flow. And that reminds me of like a river, right? A stream, like a water. There is a
Okay.
perennial river constantly flowing. And there are four fundamental directions of skills and things that you need to do in order to be effective in your job as a leader. So the first one is where it all begins, is with yourself. And I
Okay.
call that the reservoir. The second one is going downstream, is where you're managing your team, your projects, and operations. Third one is going upstream, not in the sense that you're telling your manager what to do, but there are lots of communications that need to take place, agreements, reports, status, and so on. It's a notorious place where communication breaks down. Knowing how to
Okay.
manage that
Okay.
well is fundamental. Last but not least, you're managing side stream, where you're working with your peers, product managers, and legal and sales, and there's a whole lot of people for you to work with. So putting together this constant flow, like in a river, and the four fundamental directions, then comes the title of the book, and it couldn't be any other way. The book is called The Four Streams of Leadership.
I love it. Very, very aptly named, and I love that story. So it starts within, right? That's what a great place for us to talk about a leadership, right? We teach our boys. I've got young boys at home, and my oldest is 8. And one of the things that we always tell them is you're responsible for your actions. That you take ownership over your actions. So let's dive into the first stream. Tell us about that. Where do you see leaders failing in that arena?
One good place to start is establishing the culture of the team. You will
Okay.
be working in an organization or perhaps your own company, right? The company as a whole will have its own culture, but as you work with those people around you, your team, you will have a subset of that culture. You have your own universe of culture, preferably aligned with the company culture. But the thing is, culture hates a vacuum.
Okay.
Don't establish a culture, it will be established for you. And that result may not be what you would expect.
Yeah, I love that.
But then, before anyone raises their hand and starts arguing, we have to define, but what is culture? What are you defining over there, right? Are you going to be a tyrant? And not at all. Far from it.
Okay.
Culture, in that sense, is what happens when you are not in the room. Let's say there was a system outage, there was a customer with a problem, there is something that needs to be done. How are people taking those problems, taking those challenges, acting on them, and coming up with the results? The results don't have to be exactly the same ones that you would have done, but they need to be aligned with what you would have done. Each person will operate differently, and each
Sure.
person has their own identity and agency, but it begins over there. Culture is those set of values, that core actions that you would have taken, that the outcome from actions would have been aligned had you not been in the room.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
that's where it all begins. Define culture, establish culture, because if you don't, it will be done for you because culture hates a vacuum.
Yeah, I love that perspective of culture hates a vacuum, and man, my organizations at times have really struggled when I have not defined it well and not led well in that area of champion our culture. And there's been some things within our organization early on, specifically, that were becoming the status quo that I did not want to be part of the status quo. And so when you come in and you work with a business and they say, we have a culture, but we haven't defined it. And the leadership wants to redefine the culture to start that stream within. What are the steps for an organization to do that? Maybe they're not early on. Maybe they're years down the road. They've allowed a vacuum to be there. The culture's been set. It's not been clear direction from them. But now, how do they come in and correct that?
It is very challenging. It is the proverbial turning a oil tanker, right? It
Okay.
doesn't happen overnight.
Okay.
It's really challenging. There are a few things that can be done. First, culture is not introducing let's eat pizza together or go out to have a beer. That's not culture.
Sure.
Not at all. It's far from it. But there will be things such as, oh, there is problem X, Y, and Z, or there's this process. How do we do this? You have to sit down, work with the team. Here's how we execute this problem. Oh, you have a question. Everyone gather around. Does anyone share the same question? Here's how I look at this challenge. Here's how I would have solved this challenge. And you share with the team how to work through a problem. There will be many, and you work on the next problem and the next problem. At some point, a pattern will emerge
Okay.
that you have the seeds for the new culture to happen. There's a second thing to be done that may be a little more unpopular but necessary. Reorgs have a bad rap, right?
Sure.
You don't have a good reputation, and people ask, but why are you running a reorg? Why restructuring the whole place? One, it doesn't have to be the whole place, but the legitimate reason for a reorganization is there are new projects or new missions, a new vision for the company.
Okay.
The people involved in the existing projects, which may or may not be going forward, they will have vested interests. Let's say I'm going to I'm going to give an example that is absurd, but it makes it easy to understand.
Okay.
People can try to bring that example to their daily lives. Imagine you and I started a company, and it was a company to make cupcakes.
Yum. Sounds delicious.
Delicious, right?
Sounds delicious.
Delicious. Everything is going fine. At some point, we pivot to something else, but it's not going to even be in the food, related to food.
Okay.
We started like a cement truck company,
Okay.
but we're still producing the cupcakes, and people involved in the bakery, they're invested in the cupcakes. And folks, we're doing cement now and we have trucks over here. And the reorganization, you break the vested interests, right? You say, oh, you were working on baking this or that. Let's put you on a training to figure out how to mix the correct consistency of the cement or the
Okay.
concrete that we're going to be putting in the truck. It's a very extreme example, but just to give you that further understanding
Sure.
of the interests, say, but our next recipe of cupcake is going to be wonderful and it's going to be sugar-free, or no, don't do it. We are in the cement business now. We're driving trucks. It doesn't matter how the cupcakes are going to be wonderful. It's no longer aligned with the company.
Yeah.
So a reorg in that case, you see how it becomes necessary. You don't have people anymore trying to, oh, but let me just finish that project. Say, no, don't finish it. Just abandon it. That is the primary and most legitimate reason for a reorg in a
Cool.
company.
Yeah, I like that.
Resetting culture may require some reorg where vested interests in team formation, projects, and the way of doing things are so ingrained in the company that you have to split that so you can introduce new processes, new way of doing things, and establish the culture as you see most aligned with the mission of the company.
I like that. And I like the way that you're defining out culture is it's the way that we do things. It's not just some words that we put on the wall. It's like, no, this is the process. This is the way that we do things here. And you connected it really well there at the end that if the mission changes, the organization has to change. So I look at our organizations as we made a shift out of one service line into a new one. When we talked about kind of you alluded to the oil tanker, I always like to talk about the Titanic, right? The Titanic, moving that ship away from that iceberg. That if you have God given vision of this business is not going the direction I want it to or need it to, we need to make some change. The leader has to make the hard decision to say we're changing course, and we need to know some people may fall off the boat, but we're gonna change the course because I see the iceberg, and we're not hitting that iceberg. So I'm gonna make the leader. I'm the leading within the stream within. I'm setting that tone. We're going in a different direction. Would you agree with that? Do you have any kind of additional thoughts on that?
I agree 100%, and I wanted to build on your thought.
Please.
That leader taking responsibility is actively uh, doing what they need to do. There are many leaders who abdicate that
Yeah.
responsibility.
Amen.
But the thing I wanted to talk about is the necessity for leadership to have hierarchy. Many folks have advocated for a holacracy or
Yeah.
other forms of leadership, and they may all fall short. And I tell you why. Right? I'm a big believer in explanatory knowledge, not just, oh, I believe.
Sure.
Believe means that someone else has agency over you and you're just going along. If you can explain the why, that's where you have your own agency. So the reason for hierarchy in leadership is precisely because of what you described. Some decisions are very difficult to make. And if you go for consensus or you try to get everyone on board, it will never happen. Or even if it does happen, it will take forever.
Yeah.
That's the legitimate reason for hierarchy in leadership. Go back to the example of pivoting from a cupcake bakery to a cement truck business, right? Someone must have seen that opportunity, must have pivoted into that. Um, if you ask the baker, say, should we do cement? And unlikely that we will agree with that, right? But if the opportunity for growth for future of the company, let's say there are 1,000 new bakeries in town, competition is just making the business unfeasible. You get to a point where we all are going to lose our jobs, not going to be able to sustain the business, or we can pivot to driving a cement truck and
Sure.
we can prosper going forward.
Sure.
So that's the understanding of the reason for hierarchy in leadership. Is not for telling people what to do, is not for being the boss. Those are not the legitimate reasons for hierarchy. Hierarchy is taking the responsibility for those hard decisions where a committee would do no good.
Gotcha. That makes total sense, and I love that clarity there. So we go from the stream within to the stream, the downstream. What does that look like within an organization, and where do you typically see that fall apart?
You like sports,
I love sports.
team sports,
Yeah.
right? So imagine that every single player on the field is playing the same position. You can pick whichever sport you want:
Okay.
football, basketball, hockey, you name it. Every single player on the field is playing the same position. Don't have to be a genius to figure out that that is not going to work,
Yeah.
right? The same concept apply as we assemble our teams. We were just talking about culture. How about assembling our teams? Some of the members may come, you may inherit them, some you may bring, some teams you may start from the beginning. Whichever the case is, you need to assemble the team in a certain way. I see three fundamental roles for assembling a team.
Okay.
They are the visionary, the implementer, and the forwarder. Then let's dive into each one of them.
Sure. Please.
The visionary, like a goalkeeper or quarterback, you don't need many of them, right? You need to figure out, okay, here's an idea for the product. How do we build a product out of that? Here's a need that people have been complaining about. How do we build something like that? Imagine dishwashers didn't exist. And you say, oh, people are wanting to have clean dishes, but they don't want to clean the dishes themselves. And you say, okay, I'm going to make a focus groups. And the idea coming from the focus group is going to be, all right, you put two mechanical arms on top of the sink and there's a pile on one side, the mechanical arms, grab the dirty dishes from one side, clean it and put on the other side, right? You can imagine
Sure.
this
Sure.
alternative future, right? Where that would be a dishwasher. The visionary comes and say, no, no, no. It's not going to work like that. It's going to be a box we're going to put under the counter, we'll load the dishes, and it does the work. So the outcome was what we intended: clean dishes, and I didn't have to do it. So that's the job of visionary. No, put the box and so on. Now comes the implementer and say, oh, I know how to put the box under the counter. I know how to make it watertight. I know how to build the things inside, and it's going to be the water jet. So they come and implement things. The thing with the implementer is, as the project is approaching the end, its completion, there's always some other new idea out there. And they say, oh, shiny, and they start
Sure.
running that
Yeah. Oh yeah.
direction, right?
Oh yeah.
So you need the forward, you need the closer to bring the project to completion, because one project, a product that has been built and delivered, is worth 100 other projects that are midway. The ones that are midway, you say, oh, trust me, it's going to be great, it's going to be awesome, but guess what? I can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
as the popular saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Yep.
Right? So you need those closers that are those people who are not satisfied until you put a bow on top, until the product is finished. Again, you need a few visionaries, perhaps more than one, because people want to take PTO, go on vacation. You need more implementers with people who will mostly build the product, and you need a few, but not too many, of the forwarders, the people closing the products. In reality, we all are those three personas,
Okay.
but we have a predominant persona
Okay.
within us, right? The visionary also needs to implement, also needs to close, but they will predominantly be playing different roles. And the leader themselves may be one of those roles. Actually, it must be one of those roles, must fit into one of those roles.
Sure.
Maybe the leader is the forwarder or the visionary or the implementer. It doesn't matter. It matters is that everyone has a role to play and will be playing those roles.
So let's talk about it from the small business owner, right? Let's take the solopreneur first. They're looking
Yeah.
to hire folks within their organization. What kind of questions can they ask themselves to see which of those three roles they fall in most likely? Is it something that you just naturally know, or is it something that you say you could kind of go through this personality assessment, or you could ask yourself these few questions and real quickly kind of know what role you fit in and what roles you need to start hiring for or bringing team members on within your organization for?
A few years back, I worked as a private contractor for the then Department of Defense, and I had
Okay.
security clearance, went through several trainings, and one of them was interviewing about what we can keep that aside, but the techniques about interviewing,
Sure.
and that has taught me a lot. One of the things that you want to do is to keep asking a question in different ways, depending on what you want. You said you have young kids at home. I also have kids, but mine just turned 18 and they are freshmen in college.
Congratulations.
I have twins. So imagine they go out, they borrow the car, go out and go to the movies. But you don't know exactly did they actually go to the movies or not. How do we interview them without being a nonsense parent or
Sure.
a bad boss, right?
Sure.
You say, "Oh, you went to the movies. Great. What time did you get there? Oh, around 7. What did you watch? Oh, we watched the new XYZ movie, the new whatever movie. What did you guys eat over there? Oh, we added popcorn. Did you add butter or not? So you start asking those questions that if you actually went to the movie and watched that movie and bought popcorn and you put butter and here's the time that you left, you will know how to answer those questions without a problem, without missing a beat. Now, if you didn't go to the movies and instead you went do some other shenanigans with your friends. You know, we
Sure.
all have done that when we
Sure.
are younger and we went to some other kid's house and spent the night playing video games, whatever it was. But it wasn't the agreement. Now you're not going to be able to answer those questions, right? Because if you put butter in the popcorn and then later you're watching the movie, it's like, how many napkins did you bring? You say, oh no. I said, hey, you said you put butter in the popcorn. Your fingers will be super greasy. You need to have lots of napkins. So you start getting those details. Bringing that back to our conversation, each business owner, small business, large business, whatever situation you are in the moment, you will know the profile of the person you need to bring on board.
Okay.
What do you need from that person? From that, you figure out what are the questions I need to know for that person. Is it going to be an engineer? Is it going to be a salesperson? What are the questions where I can keep asking that person until I get to a level where I'm satisfied with the answers, and the person comes across as enabled, as competent in their job and a good fit for your company, right?
Gotcha.
So if you keep asking those series of questions, if the person have the skills they say they do, they will
They can
go a
demonstrate
good way.
them across. I love that perspective, and I
Yeah.
love the analogy of the kids. Right, the one I always remember hearing growing up was the four friends are late to school, and they said they had a flat tire on the way to school, and the teacher set them down in different parts of the room and asked them which tire was did you change, and they were not able to say because they had lied. Right, but asking good questions is super valuable in the interview process. But for the business owner specifically, is there a way for them to evaluate themselves to say, I'm running, I'm myself, and I don't have any employees, and I'm looking to hire an employee. And I hear you say there's three kind of key roles within my organization. I need a visionary, and I feel like that's kind of my role. Is there some specific questions that you can allude to that help us define that out for other people? Does that make sense for the implementer or the closer? Is there something that you can help us when we're interviewing the next hire to help get them in the right role?
Well, if you're bringing a person in, you already have a role in mind for that person. Is it going to be sales development? Is it going to be an engineer? Is it going to be the legal departments to help you uh, organize the operations of the company? Um, it's surprising how many times a person with a legal background comes as the COO or CFO. It's surprising, but well, it was surprising to me. Anyway, but the act of asking questions is going to be aligned with that role. If you know you need that role, you need to know what that role means. What does it mean to be sales development? What
Okay.
does it mean to be an engineer, right? That if you don't have a clear idea in mind, perhaps it's better to stop for a moment, study what those roles are and what they do, then come up with a set of questions,
I love
right?
that.
Because if you come up with a one question that fits all, that may not end up well, right? I think it begins with understanding of, okay, you have a need. I have a role in mind. Is that role aligned with what I have in mind? If it is, study more, figure out what it is, then come up with the questions for that,
Yeah.
right? If it's a sales development, how do you reach out to people? Is it a cold call? No one answers phones nowadays. How do you reach out to people? Do you go to social networks? And so you start coming up with the strategy of saying, I need to do sales development. And the outcome intended is someone has to be on the other side where I can go and complete the sale. The sales development is to create the leads, not to close the deals, right? That would be one way of doing. If it's an engineer, you may have a little better idea because you may be involved with the day-to-day of developing that product.
Sure.
So how do you code or how do you machine this? How do you weld that? And you come up with those questions.
Nice. I like that clarity. Thank you for providing that. Okay, so then you said the stream that is most likely the issue, or you see most often as the issue, is the upstream. What do you mean by that? Give us an example.
We were just talking about hierarchy in leadership, but because there is hierarchy and it is needed, there is that natural blocker of the people at the lower levels of the hierarchy feeling intimidated by the people at the higher levels of a hierarchy, even though they're all people, they're all equals, right? But in the execution of the job, there is that level of hierarchy, there's that natural intimidation. How do you address that? One way to come up with is, or to address that is, how can we how can we come up with the metrics needed to measure the output, the development of the business, the intended outcome? And that can be a trap because Charles Goodhart, he came up with, I'm paraphrasing him here, but he says that once you start pursuing a metric, the metric stops being useful because now you're no longer doing what needs to be done, but you're just chasing the metric, right? Going back to our example, if our goal was to produce 1,000 cupcakes a day, and we're still chasing that, even though we are pivoting to cement trucks, that would not be a good metric. So metrics have to be constantly revised, but that creates a reason for you to talk and have more deeper conversations with your manager. What are we measuring? What is intended? How do we create status reports around those metrics? This metric is no longer working. What can we replace that with? It could be an instrument that, even though it's impersonal as a metric, you can just put on a dashboard, but it is a trigger for many conversations that need to happen.
Okay.
If you're not having the conversations and sharing information with your manager, they will not have the same perspective that you do about the jobs. How are you enabling them to make the right decisions if they have incomplete information,
Okay.
right? So if you are intimidated, one, don't. Two, use metrics as an excuse to have the metrics conversation plus others,
I love that. Yeah.
right?
Numbers have no emotion, right? They're just numbers. They tell a very clear story. They're not biased. Let me ask you from this perspective, Dalmo. We've got a lot of leaders that listen to this, and they may not have somebody that they directly report to, but they have folks that report to them. What is a way that a leader can make it where the upstream communication flows better? Is there any advice that you can give to the leader at the top that's leading the organization, the business, the team, and they want communication flowing vertically well? Any advice there?
May I correct a misconception over there?
Please. Yeah, please.
Everyone will have someone to report to. Even if you are the CEO of the company, you have customers to report to, right? You own good service, you
Sure.
own the outcome customers intended to them, right?
Fantastic point.
Depending on Yeah, depending on the scale of your business, you may not be able to talk with all your customers, but you can talk to some of them, right? What questions do you want to hear from them? Because if you come up with a survey and, oh, let me interview you, some people get annoyed by that and they say, you know what, if you send me another survey, I will find a different vendor. But there are legitimate conversations that you can do.
Okay.
Coming up with a different example here. Because in Colorado, there are often hailstorms. You have to replace the roof because of damage
Sure.
and so on. You can come up and say, hey, what are you looking, you damage? And I found something else. And you come up with the final result and say, here's what was done. Let me walk you through the process. We had to replace this panel. We put new shingles. Your roof is going to last another 15, 20 years. And you start having those conversations, people naturally start talking back to you.
Okay.
You can host an event where you can tell homeowners about roof repairs, for example, and they will join the event. Let's say you're offering pizza and some drinks and whatever it is, some will come and join. You have that space to have the conversations. So whether you have a team and you're having conversations with your direct manager
Okay.
or you're reporting directly to customers, you will have mechanisms to get that feedback. Why is it important? The reason is it important, and we need to open a parenthesis over here, is imagine you driving your car on a highway
Okay.
and you're keeping your lane, right? But you're not driving in a straight line. You're constantly making tiny little adjustments to stay on your lane,
Sure.
right? So the car's drifting a little bit, you bring it back, and that is a feedback loop and allows you for error correction. If you're drifting out of your lane, you bring it back, and so on. You need that feedback loop mechanism to do the error correction on your business. You can
Okay.
be your if your team inside of a bigger business, if you are the CEO, your operations against customers. The reason for one of the main reasons for the communication going upstream, you need that feedback loop to do the constant error correction. That's why also frameworks for productivity exist. We all know of waterfall and agile and scrum. Those are all very well thought, very beautifully built frameworks, but the intent they want is to force that mechanism of a feedback loop so you can become aware of those errors and you correct them. The sooner, the better,
I love that.
right?
Yeah, it's so much better to correct it now than 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now, and the numbers look really poorly. Right. That one of the ones that I always love is Jeff Bezos early on was helping pack boxes, and they were sitting in the floor packing boxes, and he said, "Oh, I've got a great idea. I'm gonna get everybody knee pads." And the lady who was there, she said, "Sir, we don't need knee pads. We need tables." And he's like, "Well, of course you need tables. Why are we doing this on the floor? Let's get tables and do this at tables and so much easier standing, right?" And it's like those decisions, that feedback loop is super valuable because your efficiency, your frontline people, they know some of the issues, but it takes the manager creating that atmosphere of trust and accountability that we're going to have that feedback loop. We're going to take your feedback. We're going to make some changes on it. Doesn't mean we're going to let you run the show because that's not your role, but we are going to take that feedback. So the final stream, as we kind of come to the end of our time, Dalmo, thank you again for sharing with our audience in our community here. When you talk about the stream out to people that you're working alongside, that you're co-managing with, that are team members, leaders on your team, what does that look like?
So there is a word feared by many, and that word is networking.
Okay.
It can be dreadful, right? You are put in an event where you didn't want to go, and there are many other people in the same situation over there. No one wants to talk about anything or reluctant about talking about anything of any real meaning. It doesn't have to be like that, right? If you do networking for the sake of it, it is dreadful. There's a much better way of doing that. People will have interests in common. It doesn't matter how different the two people are, they will have some area of overlapping.
Okay.
Maybe they like building Legos or going to concerts, or there's an infinity of topics out there. Especially if you work on a project together, there is something to talk about that, right? So when you find people where you share a topic in common and you're not going into an artificial environment, but you're talking on the day to day, or go out for a walk, or go grab a cup of coffee, and you're talking about those things in common,
Okay.
that is networking, but that is networking that people can do together, right? And they they don't feel dreadful. They say, oh, it's great to go for a walk or grab a cup of coffee and we're going to discuss this new project or whatever it is. That is part of working side stream because you need to understand each other. You need to have that initial common ground so you can work on completing the outcomes that the companies and customers are expecting from you, right? You're building a new pair of headphones, let's say. You're wearing one. I have mine over here, but I'm not
Sure.
wearing. Um, you you're building a pair of headphones, right? Oh, is it going to be wired? Is it going to be wireless? And how are we going to do this? And someone on the legal team is going to say, oh, but we have this and that regulations or compliance that we have to meet. How do we do this? So now we are collaborating with the legal team to meet an electronics requirement that radiation cannot be beyond certain levels because the
Sure.
phone is going to be wireless. You can see now that networking went from dreadful to something I enjoy doing together. And now we have a lot common ground. We start working together. We're getting somewhere. So this is one of the aspects
I love
of
that.
working side stream.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the symbiotic relationship that happens as you're doing something else, but you're getting different perspectives, right? You're getting different perspectives on the same problem, making sure that we're all aligned doing that. But there's so much value in the whole team having input when you're walking, having a conversation, getting something for lunch. Well, what a great way for us to end this conversation. Dalma, thank you so much. Where can people get your books? So the Four Streams of Leadership. Where can people find that if they want to pick that up?
I would love to invite everyone listening to come and visit my website. It's dalmocirne.com, spelled DALMOCIRNE.com. From the website, you have links to buy the book. You have access to all my articles I publish on the website as well, also social networks. There will be links to my social networks. You can book an appointment with me. There's a calendar over there. Pick a time that is available, schedule some time for us to talk, perhaps continue this conversation. And the form for contact, right? If you want to shoot me a message, you have a question, you have something you want to discuss, I reply to all messages. So going to my website is the perfect hub to everywhere else, everything else
I love it.
you
So
suggest.
we'll make sure everybody, if you're watching along, that's in the show notes. So your website's going to be in the show notes. Delmo, again, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. We're better because of it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Market Mavericks. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Market Mavericks. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to take your own adventure to the next level. Don't forget to follow the show to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, share it with others who could benefit. And hey, if you know a market maverick who has a story that needs to be heard, please drop their name in the comments. We would love to bring their insights to the show. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and leading with purpose.